The landscape of the deathmatch wrestling scene saw many changes in 2024. We saw companies go on hiatus and then return, some left without any future plans, and we also witnessed brand new companies pop up out of nowhere. One of deathmatch wrestling's top performers hung up their deathmatch boots, while we also saw this new crop of talent really grab the scene by the throat to make a serious statement. I believe 2024 saw a real transformation in the deathmatch world, but rest assured, the blood, the sweat, and that sweet ultra violence is going nowhere. After 12 months of some of the most diabolical matches in all of professional wrestling, I'm here to break down who I believe were the top 15 deathmatch wrestlers from 2024. Keep in mind, this evaluation will be based on performance, notable victories, tournament success rate, along with other achievements and different accomplishments. Bottom line is, wins matter here. I also need to add in a disclaimer that this list will not include any deathmatch wrestling from Japan because I don't feel comfortable enough with their scene to accurately assess them. So with all that said, buckle up, we are in for a wild ride because there is a ton to cover. Let's get this countdown started. Number 15, Judge Joe Dredd. The 2024 Breakout Wrestler of the Year award winner doesn't have a ton of experience on his resume just yet, but he has made great strides this year, winning fans over, both dishing out ultra violence and even more so with his intriguing promos, something the scene is lacking. Look, the wins weren't there this year, but unlike some other very popular wrestlers that aren't going to make this list, he really shined in the deathmatch tournaments that he took part in. The Judge and Otis Cogar had an absolute bloodbath in round 1 of 7's King of the Death matches. He made it to the finals of his second King of the Kill, where he also beat Lou Nixon to win his only championship on the year. And he also made it to the finals of CZW's 21st Tournament of Death, where he and Mickey Knuckles about killed themselves. Those events alone stood out as a huge bright spot on the year, despite his lack of victories. Match-wise, another highlight to 2024 for Dredd was his impressive showing at XPW's Alive and Kicking show. He fought for his life for well over an hour in the Hell's Gate Gauntlet match, beating Eric Ryan, Dr. Redacted, Dirty Ron, Tarzan Duran, Necro Butcher, and Mickey Knuckles, only to lose to Homeless Jimmy at the very end. But his biggest win of the year had to come inside the Cage of Death in December against his biggest rival, Mickey Knuckles. That capped off the feud with Mickey that a lot of fans were very, very pleased with. Speaking of feuds though, he had a run-in with Matt Tremont over an RPW where he did his best to bring out the old bulldozer. So in the end, yes, the amount of wins were not that impressive, but just about everything else about Judge Joe Dredd was. And once those wins and titles start to roll in, the entire deathmatch scene better watch out. Number 14, Mance Warner. To me, Mance Warner was the hardest person to rank in this entire video. No doubt about it though, Mance Warner took charge of that top spot and the whole independent wrestling scene in 2024. Once he got a hold of that GCW World Championship, he didn't look back, defending it almost every other week it seemed. He won the title back in June, and as we are headed into 2025, he is still going strong as champion. Now that sounds great, but the reason this ranking is so difficult is because a majority of his matches were not death matches. But a lot can be said about Mance bringing that deathmatch credibility back to the title that it has lacked in recent years. I thought it was pretty clear that his defenses against Green Phantom, One Called Manders, Gringo Loco, Hoodfoot, Cyclope, Tank, Too Tough Tony, and Masha Slamovich all proved that. I mean, I honestly believe Mance's blood feud with Effie will go down as one of the best GCW has ever done, and let's not forget it also took home Jobber Radio's Rivalry of the Year award. So yes, while Mance brought some much needed ultra violence back into the GCW world title picture, the lack of overall death matches hold him back just a little bit. Nonetheless, Mance Warner jumped to the forefront of independent wrestling and brought the deathmatch scene with him. Number 13, Tommy Trainwreck. Tommy is not a rookie to the deathmatch world by any means, but 2024 was, without a doubt, his most successful year yet. Competing in over 50 matches, most of which with ICW Milwaukee, Horror Slam, and his own promotion We Love Wrestling, he racked up an impressive 63.1% win percentage, and that's not too shabby. And with all of those wins came plenty of gold, with 3 separate reigns of the ICW Alternative Championship, which he currently holds to end the year, by the way, and even a run with the Horror Slam Heavyweight title, which he ended up losing to JJ Escobar. Looking at his tournament performances, he saw his most active year yet, making it to the finals of the Insane 8, losing to Oren Veidt. He competed in his first Carnage Cup, being eliminated by Mickey Knuckles in the opening round. And even though he technically stole both of his matches, he ended up winning the 3rd Murder City Deathmatch Cup for Horror Slam. And with that success, he started taking on even more bookings for companies like RPW, where he would get a shot at Remington War's Kamikaze Championship. Tommy also tried to snag Carnage's CCW Supreme Violence title in August, but neither one of those title opportunities panned out. He would, however, pick up a win in XPW teaming up with Little Sicko. And then near the end of the year, Trainwreck won even more fans over with his performance against Otis Koger for ICW No Holds Barred. Now that is a lot to tout, and the only reason Trainwreck is ranked as low as he is, given everything he accomplished, is his lack of wins over top-tier talent. Now, he did pull in some high-profile wins over Dr. Redacted, Eric Dillinger, Randy West, and Masada, which was his biggest win by far, but often came up short against some more higher-ranked wrestlers on this list. Either way, though, it was a banner year for Tommy Trainwreck, and one that he should be very proud of. Number 12, John Wayne Murdoch. The Rabbit King himself is still arguably the best match-by-match deathmatch wrestler in the United States, but as you're about to find out, 2024 was a mixed bag for him. Murdoch took a step back in overall matches this year, which was his lowest number since 2020, and that stunted his amount of victories, which happened to be his lowest since 2013. He was able to capture the Unsanctioned Pro Hardcore title from Neil Diamond Cutter after a little screw job involving Alex Colon, and his only other championship would come in the form of the XCF Tag Team Championships, which he and Reed Bentley won in a wild 5-team ladder match. But the major bulk of Murdoch's success in 2024 came from GCW, where he picked up some solid wins over opponents like Brandon Kirk, Pagano, Lou Nixon, Dr. Redacted, and Alec Price. But besides his major milestone that we will talk about in a second, Murdoch took a lot of crushing losses to nearly kill all of his momentum. To this day, people are still talking about his shocking loss to Mr. Danger.
He beat him! He beat him! Mr. Danger! Mr. Danger won!
Even with all of those losses, though, there is a huge diamond in the rough, a trophy that eluded Murdoch for several years now, the Tournament of Survival. The Duke would put down Slade, Brandon Kirk, and Yuki Ishikawa to finally take the trophy home, cementing his record 10th deathmatch tournament win, more than anybody else in history at this point. So while yes, 2024 seemed to be a bit of a roller coaster at times for Murdoch, I believe the highs overcame the lows, and let's not kid ourselves here, people. The match performances are always a bright spot despite anything else. Number 11, Bobby Beverly. This happens to be Bobby Beverly's lowest ranking in several years, but it wasn't because of any downgrade in the match quality department. The nearly 20-year veteran seemed to take his foot off the gas just a little bit, competing in a tad over 20 death matches, and also deciding to sit out of any tournament competition. Winning a large majority of his matches this year, the Bev came into 2024 still holding the PPW Triple Crown title, which he did lose early on in March to Alex Daniels. Not to worry though, because Circle 6 introduced a brand new deathmatch title known as the Circle 6 Ultra Violent Championship. In July, Bobby Beverly went on to defeat AJ Gray, Oren Veidt, and Journey Fatu to become the first ever champion. Soon after, 7 would split off from Circle 6, and Bobby Beverly would go on the rest of the year defending the now titled 7 Ultra Violent Championship against opponents like Hoodfoot, Crazy King, and Alex Colon. That match against Alex Colon at the King of the Death Matches event basically stole the show, and I highly recommend giving it a watch. So looking back at 2024, the Ultra Violent Enforcer delivered in pretty much every single match with no duds sprinkled in, beating every big name wrestler he stepped in the ring with. I'm talking Drake Younger, Danny DeMonto, Dr. Redacted, Lou Nixon, Eric Dillinger, Joel Bateman, all of those ultra-violent title matches I just mentioned, and even WWE's Jacob Fatu. Yeah, it was a solid year to say the least, and with a handful of more high-profile wins, the Bev probably would have found himself inside the top 10, but falls just shy. Number 10, Hoodfoot. Last year's number 1 ranked deathmatch wrestler didn't quite measure up to that success in 2023, but due to slowing down to allow his body to actually rest and taking a breather when it comes to deathmatch tournaments, well, kinda, this slide was bound to happen. Now, do not get me wrong, Hoodfoot still turned in quite the year, winning half of his matches, including some against other high-caliber talent. Over the past 3 years or so, Hoodfoot has been known to be one of the most active deathmatch tournament wrestlers out there, but the only tournaments he would enter in 2024 would be Seven's King of the Death Matches and AWR's Asylum Deathmatch Tournament 5. And at ADT 5, he would be eliminated by Remington Roar in the semifinals, killing any chance of that repeat. Mo would eliminate Orin Veidt and Big F and Joe, making it to the finals in the King of the Death matches, but Schlack would prove to be too much for him and Otis Koger in the end. When it comes to championship belts, Hoodfoot practically showered himself in gold, as he would have 4 separate title reigns, 2 of which will carry over into 2025, as he is currently the RPW Heavyweight Champion, as well as the Flophouse Champion. He did start the year off still the ICW American Deathmatch Champion, a run that broke all kinds of records, but quickly lost the title to the Killdozer in January. The same thing kind of happened with his first RPW title run when Atticus Koger took the belt from him in March. But yeah, in just 1 year's time, Hoodfoot would double his career title reigns. Looking past those tournaments and title matches, Hoodfoot also held high-profile wins over Drake Younger, Matthew Justice, Eric Dillinger, Jimmy Lloyd, Otis Koger, Chuck Stein, and Hardway Heater. The highlights kept coming though, as Hoodfoot would return to GCW to challenge Mance Warner for the GCW World Championship, and even though he came up short, he garnered himself even more attention. Now keep in mind, Hoodfoot Mo Atlas accomplished all of this while taking a bit of time to try and heal up, so yeah, that's just scary to think about. Number 9, Dmitry Alexandrov. Last year, I said the only thing holding the Deathmatch Jesus back was more high-end competition. Well, this year, Dmitry Alexandrov was presented with those opponents and was given more opportunities, and he excelled in that spotlight. Dmitry has revealed himself to be a true pillar in the Texas deathmatch scene, holding multiple championships just as he did last year, and going into 2025, he remains both the hot hardcore champion as well as the Wrestle Rave deathmatch champion. And keep in mind, he won those titles back in 2023. When it comes to those bigger matches, Alexandrov debuted for XPW, challenging Schlack in a hard-fought world title match. He also made his debut for Juggalo Championship Wrestling, Circle 6, as well as 7, and even CZW competing at Cage of Death 21. Putin's least favorite wrestler ended up going 2 for 2 in deathmatch tournaments that he competed in as well. The third time was a charm, as Alexandrov put his Wrestle Rave Deathmatch Championship on the line throughout the Death Triad 3, walking in and walking out with that belt. He would beat Gary J, Sky Dela Cremosa, and then Casanova Valentine in the finals to win the Devil's Due Death Cup for Death in the Family based out of Texas, meaning Alexandrov happened to be one of only 3 wrestlers to win 2 deathmatch tournaments in 2024. The quality of competition did take a step up with opponents like John Wayne Murdoch, Schlack, Madman Pondo, Joel Bateman, Arrow Boy, Akira, and at times his buddy Brick Savage, but more wins and more variety of competition is still needed to advance a little further in these rankings. Perhaps next year, Alexandrov takes yet another step forward, and if companies keep giving him more of these chances, I have no doubt that he will. Number 8, Lou Nixon. The deathmatch wrestling scene in the UK has exploded over the past several years, with loads of talent making their way to the United States even to prove they can hang with anyone in the world. And one of the wrestlers right in the forefront of this crop is Big Lou Nixon. In just over the past 3 years alone, he has become one of the most decorated champions, period. In 2024, he held 4 different championships at the same time at one point. We're talking the KCW Openweight title, Rise Underground's European Deathmatch title, and the CXW Tag Team titles. They all came from England, but he also had a solid run with the RPW Rust Belt Championship as well. For 4 months, he took the Rust Belt Championship back home to defend it 8 times, really putting some mileage on it. He would finally lose the belt when he came back to the United States to defend it during the King of the Kill 2 tournament. The only other deathmatch tournament that he took part in was TNT Extreme's Thrill Kill tournament, where he made it to the finals only to lose to B.A. Rose. Nixon had quite a busy schedule in 2024, fighting in over 70 matches, where he often spent a lot of time in the United States frequenting H2O, RPW, GCW, and ICW No Holds Barred. He racked up wins over tough competition like Dr. Redacted, Malcolm Monroe III, Mickey Knuckles, Casanova Valentine, Bam Sullivan, Bobby Beverly, Austin Luke, and Hoodfoot. And though he didn't win, he had other high-profile matches against big names in the deathmatch world like Matt Tremont, Tommy Vendetta, Matthew Justice, Cruel, Brandon Kirk, Neil Diamond Cutter, John Wayne Murdoch, Cyclope, and many, many others. If you can't tell by now, I'm saying it was basically a who's who list of competitors this year for Nixon. When you consider all of that, it just kind of scratches the surface when it comes to how successful he was in 2024, because over 50 of his matches were over in the UK. Throw all of that together with the combined styles of MMA and ultra-violence, and you have a recipe for one of the top stars going today. And I honestly wish I had more time to cover the UK scene, because those guys and gals definitely deserve a lot more attention. Number 7, Tommy Vendetta. Quite possibly the most hated man in deathmatch wrestling, all because he wears a long sleeve shirt, by the way. Thomas Oliver Vendetta continues to move his way up the rankings with the great year that he put together. Now, his deathmatch tournament showings are interesting to look at. He beat Drake Younger in round 1 of Horror Slam's Murder City Deathmatch Cup 3, but then he refused to wrestle again and withdrew himself from the tournament. He suffered a round 1 loss to Alex Stretch at H2O's Ultra Violent Kingdom 7, and then was bounced out in round 1 by Brandon Kirk at GCW's Nick Gage Invitational 9. And I'm not really sure if you want to count RPW's King of the Kill 2. He was forced to defend his crown against Schlack, who won the tournament, but then Tommy ate the loss there as well. Now, while Vendetta's tournament showing may not be nothing to write home about, he held 6 different deathmatch titles, which is just an insane number to put in your head. He started the year off as an H2O Tag Team Champ with Malcolm Monroe III. At the same time, he was the RPW Rust Belt Champion, a title he lost without even competing in the match, by the way. He briefly held the Flophouse Heavyweight title as well as the Chaos Heavyweight title. But his reign of 742 days as the ex-ICW Extreme Intense Champion came to an end when he lost to Orlando Christopher, but he promptly won the title back and still has that belt to this day. I know the fans love to hate Tommy, but he is one of the best hybrid deathmatch wrestlers going. I mean, he put on great matches with solid talent like Clint Margera, Otis Koger, Lou Nixon, DBA, Jameson Shook, Akira, and a lot of other high caliber talent. His tag matches with Malcolm Monroe III stood out to me as some of the best all year long, as I felt the Pillars were kind of robbed of Tag Team of the Year. So yeah, feel free to hate the lovable psychopath all you want, but it doesn't stop him from being one of the most charismatic and in-demand wrestlers in the deathmatch world today. Number 6, Remington Roar. The carnivore Remington Roar has creeped up into the top 6 deathmatch wrestlers and seems to finally be shedding away that underrated status that he's been carrying around for years now. And I honestly find it fascinating that it's taken this long for people to finally realize Roar's full potential. After entering in an unbelievable 8 deathmatch tournaments last year, he wisely dialed it back to just 2 in 2024. He murdered Mouse in the first round of H2O's Ultraviolent Kingdom 7, making it to the finals where Alex Stretch would come out on top. He then became the only person to win 2 AWR Asylum Deathmatch tournaments when he beat Eric Dillinger in the finals, where he also captured the AWR Heavyweight title. And when it comes to championships, Roar more than made up for his lack of tournaments entered by also holding the AWR Revolutionary title. He held the Flophouse Heavyweight title until July, where he lost it to Tommy Vendetta. And then there's the RPW Kamikaze Championship, which he won in February of 2023 and still holds that title going into 2025. Those Kamikaze title defenses against Eric Dillinger, Vic Craig, Kamikaze the Wrestler, Chuck Stein, That Kyle, and Tommy Trainwreck were all standout performances. The dominance was on full display this year, as was his strength, which not many wrestlers besides maybe Shane Mercer can even come close to matching. I will say it will be hard for the Carnivore to move up any higher in these rankings though, without stiffer competition. But as more of these opportunities arise, I see no ceiling for what he can achieve. Number 5, Matt Tremont. The Bulldozer was dead through the first half of 2024, and what was left was the Killdozer. And it would be the Killdozer who would dethrone a record-breaking ICW American Deathmatch Championship reign from Hoodfoot in January, and over the next several months, he laid waste to everyone put in front of him. That included Otis Cogar, Danny Darko, Green Phantom, Vic Craig, Brett Eisen, Cody Manhorn, but then came in the kryptonite in the form of 440. It would then be Atticus Cogar who would dethrone Tremont. Now, statistically speaking, this was another great year for Tremont. No, he doesn't compete in every deathmatch tournament under the sun anymore, but he picks and chooses what matters to him. Like one of the fastest rising tournaments out there, RPW's King of the Kill, where he defeated Otis Cogar in the opening round, but was then brutalized by Schlack in round 2. Then Tremont packed his bags and took off to Australia for Deathmatch Down Under's Dream 4 tournament. In the very first round, he would beat Vixen to win the Deathmatch Down Under Deathmatch title, and he kept that train rolling, defending it in the second round against Michael Weaver, and then again against Mad Dog in the finals to pick up that win, moving up to 9 Deathmatch tournament wins under his belt. There were a ton of other highlights for Tremont in 2024 though, because he also traveled over to the UK to fight for Bleeding Gums Wrestling in September, beating another living legend, Iceman. And then at XPW Sphere, we got to witness a clash from the past as he fought Drake Younger. And then there was his concrete canvas cinder block death match with Schlack, which ended up winning Match of the Year, an award Tremont won last year as well against Neil Diamond Cutter. All of those matches were well and good, but if I was a betting man, which I am, I would guess some of the matches Tremont cherished the most were against his homegrown H2O crew like Anthrax, Christian Ross, Kennedy Hardcastle, Jess Moss, JB Anderson, Marcus Mathers, and of course, Alex Stretch. This all made for yet another eventful year for the Bulldozer, and what a resurgence of a career we have seen out of Tremont these past couple of years. I would be surprised, but when you're talking about one of the best to ever do it, I guess I shouldn't be in the slightest. Number 4, Atticus Cogar. No one, and I mean no one, brings more creativity and intrigue to the table when it comes to deathmatch wrestling than Atticus Cogar. He's always cutting captivating promos and putting together interesting edits on social media, doing his best to tell stories in a genre of wrestling that is in serious need. Tallying up an over 70% win percentage and holding on to that ICW American Deathmatch title, which the fans voted for Deathmatch Championship of the Year, by the way, Atticus had the scene in a death grip. Toss in his RPW Heavyweight Championship reign during most of the year as well, and you can see his method was beginning to pay off. At one point, Atticus practically declared war on the entire deathmatch world, stating that he was embarrassed by what he was seeing and told everyone to lock it
the fuck down.
He was also on the front lines during the 440 Civil War between Yellow and Blue. And I believe his work with Wrestling Revolver was very good this year, which I hope a lot of people don't gloss over. But I believe his wins over legends like Homicide, Drake Younger, and Matt Tremont will go down as some of his biggest matches on the year. But if you were to name a deathmatch company, Atticus Cogar came out on top, whether it was RPW, ICW No Holds Barred, Seven, Wrestling Revolver, Circle 6, Rise Underground, Horror Slam, and even GCW. Yeah, his shocking return at the Nick Gage Invitational 9 was one of the most talked about stories all year long. And speaking of Rise Underground, the lone deathmatch tournament that he competed in this year, he traveled over to the UK for the Games of Death 3, where he managed to beat Danny Darko, but then lost to Big F and Joe in the finals. The accolades would keep piling on as Atticus and his brother Otis Cogar won Jobber Radio's award for Tag Team of the Year, and you could see why. Otis never left his brother's side and helped ensure that the ICW American Deathmatch title never went anywhere. I think it's going to be pretty hard to find a more entertaining independent wrestler in 2024, and I'm not just talking about deathmatch wrestling, people. Number 3, Mickey Knuckles. Few wrestlers will ever even come close to achieving what Mickey Knuckles has done for deathmatch wrestling. Somehow, some way, for the third time in 4 years, Mickey Knuckles won 2 deathmatch tournaments in the same calendar year, and she came really close to making it 3. She made it to the finals of Carnage Cup 14 after plowing through Tommy Trainwreck and Jimmy Controversy, but was eliminated in the finals during that crazy gauntlet match. She would win POR Wrestling's Hardcore Grand Prix 5, defeating 6 different opponents, leaving with the trophy as well as the POR World and Hardcore Championships. Then after 2 straight years of hard work and disappointment, getting to the CZW Tournament of Death Finals, Mickey finally captured that long-awaited TOD win in spectacular fashion. Literally everywhere Mickey went, she found success. Her and Randy West captured the Horror Slam Tag Team Championships together. She would hold the XPW Women's Championship throughout the entire year, where she finally beat Tessa Blanchard. And wouldn't you know it, her return to Juggalo Championship Wrestling has been extremely fun to watch. And that's really it. At the end of the day, that's still the best thing about Mickey Knuckles. No matter how much blood is shed or glass is shattered, you know you're in for one of the most entertaining matches on the card. It's fascinating to see that after over 20 years in the business, she's still going as strong as ever, and dare I say, better than ever. Her feud with Judge Joe Dredd in XPW and CZW were also highlights on the year for sure, resulting in a memorable Cage of Death match in December. So when you add up everything together, it equals one unforgettable year for your Aunt Mickey. And I think this goes without saying, but if you haven't come to the conclusion just yet, I think it's a safe lock-in that Mickey Knuckles has secured her spot as one of the true deathmatch icons in the business. Number 2, Neil Diamond Cutter. Now, I'm not sure how much of a hot take this is or not, but I believe 2024 was Neil Diamond Cutter's best year of his career. I mean, good God, look at all the deathmatch tournaments that he participated in. He fought in ICW Milwaukee's Insane 8, Marks R. Russ's The Unlucky 8, IWA Deep South's Carnage Cup 14. He went to the finals in his 3rd straight Slave to the Deathmatch tournament. He also went to the finals in Tremont's 5th Deathmatch tournament for H2O. He even traveled to the UK for Bleeding Gum's first Lust of Death tournament, where he made it to the finals there. He came so close so many times, but the one tournament he made it to the finals and won was H2O's Unlucky 13 Danny Havoc Hardcore title tournament. And if you're doing the math at home, that's a lot of deathmatch tournament matches, 18 to be exact. Yeah, way more than anybody else on this list. Winning that Danny Havoc Hardcore Championship for H2O would also lead to 17 different title defenses in 6 different companies. Yeah, crazy numbers I'm throwing out at you here. His reign of that title will continue into 2025, where he has already secured the record for the longest title reign, surpassing Brandon Kirk as he approaches 1 full year as champion. And speaking of titles, I also want to bring up the short run with the Unsanctioned Pro Hardcore title, which he did lose in February to John Wayne Murdoch. So Neil combined for 26 different title matches on the year, which totaled more than, guess what? Yes, everyone else on this list. So he had the most deathmatch title matches, the most deathmatch tournament matches, and if you can name one bad match from Neil Diamond Cutter this year, I will call you a liar. I don't know what more you could have asked for out of everyone's favorite Honey Badger, because he is also loved by every crowd that he competes in front of. I mean, maybe it's scheduling conflicts or something like that, but I'm perplexed how Neil isn't booked in every single deathmatch company around the world at this point. And I'm willing to guess it has nothing to do with his attitude, because one look at his episode of The Life of on IWTV, and you can see he is well loved by the other wrestlers as well. So I'm asking you to make it make sense, people, but either way, mark it down for now. Neil Diamond Cutter was the second best deathmatch wrestler of 2024. Before we get to that number one spot, let's take a quick look at 5 honorable mentions. I know, it is no secret that Dr. Redacted has become one of the most in-demand deathmatch wrestlers in the United States over the past year, but I have to be completely fair in these rankings. While yes, the Murder Surgeon was being booked everywhere, but he wasn't actually winning everywhere. The 2023 Breakout Star of the Year won multiple deathmatch tournaments and claimed his first deathmatch title last year, but this year, however, it was filled with high-profile matches, but mainly losses. In fact, in this year's Insane 8, the King of the Kill 2, the Murder City Deathmatch Cup 3, and Nick Gage's Invitational 9, he was eliminated in the first round of each one of those. And he also captured 0 titles. I don't want to make it sound like I'm crapping on the Doctor or anything, because even without those accomplishments, few people can argue Dr. Redacted delivers must-see matches. Whether it was for ICW No Holds Barred, putting on bangers with Otis Cogar, Eric Dillinger, Bobby Beverly, and Sean Campbell, or his arguable match of the night against Akira at RPW's Animosity Show, as well as his debut for Combat Zone Wrestling at Cage of Death 21, even down to his emergence in GCW with some of the best matches of his career with John Wayne Murdoch, Matthew Justice, Orin Veidt, and Joey Janela. After all of those match performances, and trust me, many more, that helped get Dr. Redacted this far up on the list, but in nearly every high-profile match, he took loss after loss after loss after loss. This is a wild stat for you. It is hard to believe that he actually didn't even win his first match this year until mid-April. And I know it sounds like I'm hating on the Doctor, but trust me, I am not. I saw 2024 as a transitional year for Redacted. He took that big step up into the top-tier competitor talent pool, and sure, you're gonna take some losses on the way there. But I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if we see one of Deathmatch Wrestling's top draws inside the top 3 in next year's rankings. Unfortunately, I have Big F and Joe falling outside of the top 15 deathmatch wrestlers this year, but he still needs to be recognized for having a memorable 2024. After all, he did win Rise Underground's 3rd Games of Death tournament, taking on Atticus Cogar and Cruel in the finals. But his other tournament performances also him getting eliminated before that final round. Blue King Sharp took him out of the lust for death. At Tournament of Survival 9, Hideyoshi Kamitani eliminated him in the first round. Mickey Knuckles would then steal a win from him in the semifinals of the Tournament of Death 21, and Hoodfoot would blow past him in the second round of 7's King of the Death matches. Even though Joe managed to hold on to that TNT Extreme Division Championship through July, the main reason he failed to make this list was his sheer number of losses. I know Joe won Jobber Radio's International Deathmatch Wrestler of the Year, and that helps, but when you only win about 30% of your matches, it's going to be very hard to make the cut, especially when only 5 of those wins came inside the United States. The Drake Younger Deathmatch Retirement Tour was fun to watch. He turned in lights-out performances against anyone and everyone for almost every deathmatch company. Now here's a list for you. He had high-quality matches with wrestlers like Atticus Cogar, Hoodfoot, Bobby Beverly, Otis Cogar, Christian Ross, Chuck Stein, Dr. Redacted, Orin Veidt, Malcolm Monroe III, Tommy Vendetta, and Ninja Mac. But do you know the one thing all of those matches had in common? Drake took the loss. Hey, I know how it works, and I respect the fact that Drake left the scene, putting all these guys over, but with a deathmatch rankings like this, which tries to keep a shred of that kayfabe element intact, the outstanding performances couldn't outweigh the overwhelming number of losses. I know Drake is extremely proud of his 2024 work, and he should be. After all, he is still the BCW Street Fight champion, so there will be a couple more hardcore matches that we still have to look forward to. Chuck Stein just barely missed the top 15 again this year, and it tears me up inside because I'm about ready to crown Chuck the king of Detroit at this point. Just like how a lot of wrestlers are the head of their, quote-unquote territory, I think of Chuck running the Midwest. The dirty white boy held on to the Horror Slam Deathmatch Championship all through 2024, defending it against opponents like JJ Escobar, Remington Roar, Drake Younger, Dr. Redacted, Shane Mercer, and Malcolm Monroe III, all fantastic opponents. And he also managed to win the 2024 Chaos Cup, but outside of all of that, his lack of wins over other high-ranked wrestlers really hurt him here. Chuck rarely left the Midwest in 2024, which leaves that pool of opponents rather shallow. But nonetheless, I believe 2024 was yet another bright spot in Chuck Stein's career. It was a year of fulfilled dreams for Brandon Kirk. The Rogue won the fan support in his GCW Tournament of Survival 9 performance and arguably stole the show, but that wasn't even his biggest accomplishment on the year. 791 days, Rina Yamashita held the GCW Ultraviolet title, laying waste to everyone who stepped up. Well, on night one of Fight Club 2024 in Atlantic City, Brandon Kirk shocked the world and put an end to that record reign, becoming the new Ultraviolet champion. Sadly, his reign wouldn't last too long because during the Nick Gage Invitational 9, Kirk made it to the finals, getting past Dr. Redacted, Tank, Tommy Vendetta, and once again Rina Yamashita, only to lose the title after 35 days to Sawyer Wreck in the finals. That may sound like it ended on a sour note, but Kirk had two great performances through what some say are the two biggest deathmatch tournaments during the year. So how did Brandon miss the top 15, you may ask? Well, even with a good win percentage, the bottom line was the lack of death matches. Brandon delivered in quality, that's for sure, but when it comes to these rankings, quantity also matters, and even though I have him slotted in a top 20 spot, he did miss out on the top 15. Like I said at the start, this was a year about fulfilling dreams, becoming the Ultraviolet champion, and competing in both the NGI and Tournament of Survival. That had to be some pretty sweet bucket list items checked off. And number one, Shlak. No God, only Shlak is your number one deathmatch wrestler from 2024, and there was no real doubt about this pick. For years now, Shlak has carried this aura in the deathmatch world, which remains unmatched. The look is there, the raw intensity is there by far, and finally now the wins and accolades all are lined up for the human meat grinder to finally claim his throne. If you've been following these rankings over the past few years, Shlak has easily ranked inside the top 3, but after winning a whopping 85% of his matches this year, winning 3 different deathmatch titles, winning 2 of the biggest deathmatch tournaments all year, yeah, this spot, like I said, was a no-brainer. The fans clearly agreed as they voted Shlak to win multiple Jobber Radio end-of-year awards, including Deathmatch Wrestler of the Year and Match of the Year, which went to his Concrete Canvas Cinder Block Deathmatch with Matt Tremont for H2O. Shlak still only wrestles about 20 matches per year, which is low compared to some, but each and every match ends up being a must-see event due to how unpredictable and how destructive they all are. Inside the United States, Shlak only lost 2 matches all year, one against Eric Ryan when he lost the XPW World title at Baptized in Blood 4, and the other to Drake Younger for Battleground Championship Wrestling for the BCW Street Fight Championship. But other than that, he remained perfect. He never even actually lost the XPW King of the Death Matches title because Rob Black would strip him of it. We have to talk about deathmatch tournaments though, because first Shlak beat Jeff King, then Matt Tremont, then Judge Joe Dredd, and finally Tommy Vendetta to win RPW's King of the Kill 2, where he also won the RPW Rust Belt title along the way. Then in December, to round out the year, Shlak swept his competition in 7's King of the Death matches, taking out Ninja Mac, Masada, Hoodfoot, and Otis, to win one of Deathmatch Wrestling's longest running tournaments, which history dates back to 1997 with IWA Mid-South. And trust me, I could go on talking about his other memorable matches, like the one against Clint Margera, his other match with Masada and Ricky Shane Page. He also battled Masato Tanaka, Toshiyuki Sakuda, Eric Dillinger, Dmitry Alexandrov, as well as Bobby V. I mean, what else can be said about Shlak? He is the living and breathing embodiment of Deathmatch Wrestling in 2024. And there it is, people, my top 15 Deathmatch Wrestlers from 2024. I want to hear who you have ranked as the best from this year. Without a doubt, 2024 was the hardest year so far to nail down these top 15 wrestlers, and I already know this list will be probably the most controversial one yet. On top of some of the popular wrestlers that didn't make the cut, there were plenty more that I hope we get to talk about in the future. Seriously, I would love to add people like Alex Stretch, Dominic De Niro, Otis Koger, Eric Dillinger, Satu Jin, Malcolm Monroe III, JB Anderson, Lil Sicko, Akira, Carnage, Casanova Valentine, Tara Zepp, Anthrax, Alex Colon, and several others, but tough decisions had to be made, so I hope you understand. I want to thank all of the companies and promoters out there who held so many of these amazing events. But most of all, I want to thank the wrestlers who go out there and beat the ever-loving hell out of each other for our entertainment. That is absolutely never lost on me. Thank you all so much. And for those of you who have watched all the way here to the end, I want to thank you as well. In the meantime, support independent wrestling, support deathmatch wrestling. Don't be a dick, don't be a pirate. Pay the people who work hard to do what we all love. Thanks.